Like misrepresenting myself on a date in order to try to get into a relationship because that's what I want is going to come back to haunt me at some point when we're just living life together and then you're not who you said you were going to be, right? So I think that it's about having the courage to be yourself and and understanding that that might not appeal to everyone. I think a lot of us, from our conditioning on the playground as young kids, want to be accepted and part of the fold or part of the popular group or whatever it is, feeling like we're not on the outside, right?
Hello, welcome to Creativity Boost podcast. Today is a pleasure to have on the show someone that I believe you're going to enjoy listening to. She goes by the name Stacy Thal, and she has lots of wonderful things to talk about with regards to branding, brand strategy, and whatnot. I'm going to give her the opportunity to tell us a lot about all her accomplishments and about her personality. But today we're going to be talking about how to brand your creative identity. Take note, I didn't say how to create your brand identity. I said how to brand your creative identity. And we're going to unpack why that topic or that theme for this episode is spelled out that way. But we're going to get right into it right now. And with that being said, I'm going to invite Stacy to come tell us a bit about herself. Hi, Stacy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to chat with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. The pleasure remains mine. I'm super excited to have this opportunity to converse with you on today's episode. And I'd like you to tell us a bit about yourself as we get right into it.
Sure. Well, it's a long story to tell, so I'll try to give you the short version, but I've been at the top of brand storytelling in the competitive, volatile, crazy world of Silicon Valley marketing and advertising for about a couple of decades now. And because I've been in that world, I have been in it in different angles. I've been in it as a consultant. I have been in-house at the top of in-house agencies. I've also done agency. Speaking of, I've also done agency work for about 5 years, at a proper digital marketing agency and advertising agency. And so I'm a true hybrid. I come to this rightly. As a kid, I was always interested in pop culture and trends and things like that. And that combined with a facility with words, written and spoken, led me to a career in the beginning that just started based on interest and some innate skills that I had when it came to writing. And I kind of wrote my way into having a career in marketing and advertising, coming up through the copywriting track, and then leading to being a creative and brand lead or creative director over time. So that's everything from creating websites and banner ads that everyone sees to, contributing to Super Bowl commercials over time.
Wow, that sounds like the whole 9 yards, and it's such a pleasure to have you as we unpack this. And just to begin, I would like to set the ball rolling by explaining why we didn't call it how to create your brand identity, but how to brand your creative identity. Because most times creative people try to, create a fake identity that they think they should have in order to project themselves out there in the world. And they call that branding. But today we are going to shake that table and flip it on its head and explain to you why you should do it the other way, which is to actually brand your creative identity, accept that uniqueness that you have and brand it, and not do it the other way around and try to create a false identity and give it all the branding touch-ups that you know of, just to give it, an outlook that you're not. Having said that, what do you have to say about these two, approaches to branding?
Yeah, well, in my experience in the business world with companies, startups, enterprise companies, everything in between, is that for the last couple of decades, everywhere that I've gone, the question is always, what would Apple do? And Apple sets the standard when it comes to design. And so what we
Wow.
see is a lot of great best practices that really brilliant minds worked out, and they're not wrong. But there's this homogeny, right? There's all sorts of people looking like all sorts of other people. And
Hmm.
there's so much content out there and so much noise. I think that's what people get wrong oftentimes when you start a brand exercise, is looking at your direct competition, and that's a great place to start. But all of us are human beings, whether you're in a B2C business or a B2B business or a D2C business, whatever kind of business you're in, we're all humans and we're all getting all sorts of information all day long. So it's not just about what your competition is doing. It's what's the influx of, all the eyewash of all the marketing and advertising that's coming to you. And what is really appealing and moving to people more and more these days is authenticity. Is that just like your own fingerprint, only you can be you. Otherwise, there's not a lot of differentiation happening out there if we keep mimicking each other. And that's why I think one of the reasons that I've seen over time that now it's over, especially since the pandemic, over 90% of businesses fail in their first 5 years, and these are businesses of all scale. Many different factors go into that, lack of market fit, not good management, market whatever influences outside of people's control. But one of the things is this homogeny, is people showing up like each other everywhere, and then the market can't distinguish. Yes, maybe one is like, our competitors are doing everything in blue, let's do everything in green, but the wording is the same, the vibe is the same. So companies are really looking, and clients or customers are really looking for something, some hook to hook into, that some sense that there are some people behind the scenes there that they can really connect with. And the generations coming up that are having great market influence are wanting that more and more, that it's not just about what can you sell to me, but what do you stand for. So the best way to go for that is to really dig deep and understand who you are, and who you want to be, and what you want to project, and what's special and different about you, not what's the same, so that you can mimic like everybody that got on board when Peloton had such incredible success. Then everybody wanted to be the next Peloton. We have to be the next Peloton. And not a lot of those survived, right? Because it was just, how can people make that distinction? Maybe they're cheaper. Maybe they have a little bit of a different vibe, maybe. And then people could hook into those things. But you have to find whatever that distinction is.
Wow, that's really remarkable. And so that brings us to establishing the fact that the best way right now, the best approach is to actually differentiate yourself from the so-called competition by embracing your identity, your uniqueness, and then you can now make progress into branding that and projecting that for people to associate with their solutions, what they would like to, associate with it. Having said that, many people, they don't have a way of recognizing the creative aspect of their identity that they can put out there, because the whole concept of creativity is problem solving, right? And so people tend to make the mistake of not knowing the part of their identity that they can use in solving problems for people. And so that makes them fall flat on their face whenever they try to approach the branding conversation. So what would you say, or what would you recommend to a creative who is trying to embrace his identity, is coming into a space with a uniqueness that, after struggling, has kind of accepted, but is not yet fully convinced on how to make that identity a solution, a creative solution in the marketplace?
Well, if you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have had a different answer for you. But I think one of the ways that I would recommend that you could cut to the chase is oftentimes we lack objectivity about ourselves, or especially creatives, I've found over time. My dad was a photographer by trade, and I grew up in a very artistic household. He was a commercial photographer, so he did it for a living, a still photographer in the Hollywood film industry for years. And he had a really, really difficult time marketing himself because it was his art. And so it was very personal to him. And so it felt kind of uncomfortable, the marketing part of it, and seeing himself objectively and what he brought, not only from his eye in his creative lens, literally, in his photography, but what he brought in his personality as well. So again, a year ago, I would have said something different, but now I think one of the ways for free that people can cut to the chase and dig down into who they are and what they might bring that's unique to the marketplace is by going to ChatGPT and using that as a thought partner. Putting in, like, how do I distinguish? Here's what I do. Here's who I am. Here's how I feel about what my personality is. How can I distinguish myself in the marketplace? And use that as a thought partner and keep asking. You can ask ChatGPT, what kinds of questions do I need to, or what kind of answers do I need to give you in order for you to help me figure out how I can distinguish myself in the marketplace?
Wow,
Using
that's really, really
yeah,
helpful. Yeah, go ahead.
using my personality, and I think that that's part of what's missing, is solopreneurs, creative types, generally are doing it on their own and don't have people, oftentimes don't have mentors, don't have people to have another set of eyes or a sounding board. And if you don't, I'm saying a year ago I would have said get a mentor. Still advocating for that, but if that's something that's either uncomfortable or there isn't an option, I think ChatGPT could be a way to cut to the chase.
Wow, now that you mentioned that, yeah, now that you mentioned that, where do we go from here in the sense that how do you know how to leverage the power of mentorship without getting lost in trying to blend in or trying to be a copy of your mentor?
Well, I think that's a good way to preface things. I have a mentor, and I'd love to be a copy of her. She's an amazing person and has an amazing success. But I think that's part of the transparency in the relationship from the beginning, is just setting it up with a mentor that you might have a conversation, a completely clear and transparent conversation about, I'm looking to chart my own path. Like, I admire a lot of what you've done, and I aspire to be doing the kinds of things and having the kinds of success that you have, or the ways that you think about things, or the way you show up in the marketplace, or the way you bring your own personality or authenticity into what you do. I'm trying to find that for myself, my own version of that, not a cookie cutter thing. I'd love to learn from how you did X, Y, and Z. I think it's about being honest about it. Like, I'm not looking to be a clone of you, but I'm looking to get inspiration from the ways in which you found your own way. And what I've found when I've had those kinds of conversations is that almost everybody has imposter syndrome, and almost everybody's still trying to grow and find themselves. And some stumble into success, and some are very specific and effortful about it. But I think it's just about, if you're going to create a mentor relationship, being kind of courageous and vulnerable at the same time, and asking for what you need.
Wow, that's really, really good. So what we've said so far, for the benefit of you listening out there, is effectively you want to identify your uniqueness. You want to figure out how that solves a problem in the marketplace that's unique and differentiated, and then you want to find someone who is playing at the level you'd like to play, and instead of just copying that person or cloning that person's methods and strategies, you want to model that person in a way that your identity is not lost in the process, and your personality, your individuality, your creativity is preserved. Now, having established that, what would you prescribe for someone who has, tried to project that creative identity they have in the marketplace, but they are not finding the support that they think they should get from, in terms of the market acceptance, the market reception, or the traction in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think it's, again, super individual. It's what do you have tolerance for? So there's so much content out there these days that could help. I tend to be a lifelong learner and am open to new ideas. I think one of the ways that you could figure out about market fit is that, again, not having a sounding board, maybe you're spinning your wheels some. Maybe if you've done everything in a vacuum, you don't have a lot of proof of concept or something like that. So I think having the courage to bring some trusted folks in and do an assessment of how your website's coming across, or your pitch deck, or your introductory call with someone, is to try it out on a few people in your network that you trust, that would be both supportive and objective about it, to give you some constructive feedback. That's, I think, the first line, is to not do anything on your own and think that it's failing if you haven't really tested it with other folks, right? And I think there are all sorts of other ways that there's so many things that you can do. There's all sorts of free LinkedIn learning, whatever sessions that you can do. But one of my go-tos is Indie Collective. So, they're not given any kickback or anything, but Indie Collective is a modernized, sort of democratized MBA 2.0 for entrepreneurs, lots of them in the creative space, that are looking to go from an employee mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset. And they have a boot camp that gives you, on the fast track, like all of the benefits, or many of the benefits, of going to a university, which is the learnings, but in this case from people that are actually out in the field doing the things, and then a cohort around that of a tight network of people that are dedicated to supporting, their own and your growth. But the interesting thing about Indie Collective is that they ungated a lot of their content through a podcast, as so many have today, to draw interest to their boot camp MBA 2.0 program that's called the Modern Independent. And they have really great thinkers on there, and really practical, actionable things that you can do to help with your business, or gut check your own self, like exercises around who your ideal client profile is, and ways to go about surveying past clients to understand them better, and why they hired you, or what the trigger point was, and what appealed to them about what you were doing, so that you can get some objective feedback. So I think that's the thing, again, is this kind of courageous vulnerability of asking for help, or seeking outside input, feedback, not just doing anything, in a vacuum.
All right, cool. Now that we've got to this point in our conversation, I think it would be good to take a step, 2 steps, 3 steps, or even 4 steps backwards, and define what branding actually is from your perspective. I believe that would help the listener out there to further contextualize our conversation. So what do you have to say about the concept of branding from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, branding can mean a lot of things, right? It's generally, people think about a brand like Coca-Cola or Apple, like we mentioned, or Nike. It's sort of what you associate with it, the look and feel and the voice and tone of a brand as if it were a personality. So Apple, you could, like, if you're driving down the highway and you see a billboard, you don't necessarily have to see the logo, but that would be part of it. You could see the messaging and the font that the messaging is in, and the kind of photography or illustration that they use, and it would be, very recognizable, right? So it feels like it's a brand is like a personality that's associated strongly with a particular brand.
Okay, so now that we've set that foundation, what about the concept of creativity? How does branding relate to the concept of creativity, and what do you categorize creativity as?
Well, I think it really depends, right? I think it depends on, again, goes back to what we spoke about before, is that there's so much going on. There are so many businesses, and again, 90% of them fail within the first 5 years. People that are mimicking others' successes. This is the hashtag capitalism. This is the way of the world, but the way of America in particular. So I think it depends. Creativity, when it comes to branding, it can be a mercenary thing where it might be a company like Wendy's, let's say, that was the fast food chain that was getting sort of lost in the mix of McDonald's and Burger King and Carl's Jr. And when social media really started popping off, they made a decision, obviously, internally to come out with a stronger personality that was snarky and clever and very vibrant and engaged, and their business popped up significantly. And that was really a creative choice, that they made the decision that they were going to be more bold than what their persona was outside that, what they had historically been perceived at, which was this brand for the whole family. Like Wendy was the daughter of the founder, with the red pigtails or whatever that we know, and now they have this kind of well-regarded, snarky, but fun online personality. And so I think it just depends on what the tolerance is for a brand. Oftentimes, lots of the clients that I work for, because there's so much capital and so much at stake, tend to be more conservative and want to fall into the middle, want to do the best practices that others like Apple have and draft off of them to be in the safe zone. But I think we're seeing more and more that creativity comes in with a bold look, and a bold feel and a bold voice, captures the attention. And it could be, again, just for mercenary reasons, like let's be bold so that we can capture eyes, or it could come from the heart, from the founders and the other, people in the organization, where they have created a culture of fun personality that they really want to express in the world, sincerely. And that's their distinction, and that's how they want to grow their company, and that's how they want to attract and retain team members. So I think it really just depends on, your tolerance and your interest.
Wow. Okay. Now, what would you say to someone who is a creative person, but that person is having problems getting compensated for the solutions they provide, because they are playing in a market where there are established brands that have made a name for themselves? How would you recommend that these upcoming creatives with their brands, with their upcoming brands, how would you recommend that they position themselves to be able to get the compensation that they need, at least at their level, that they need to scale to a better level?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, it really depends on the individual. I mean, what you're talking about now is sales. And my experience with creative folks is that, they can hold their nose and do it, but that's not their forte, right? That's not why they got in it. That's not what they were sitting around fantasizing about when they were a kid and drawing on their whatever, like folder at school. So I think it's about embracing and accepting the fact that what we're doing in part is sales, if in fact that's what you want to do. And it could be going outside your comfort zone and networking more than you would either online or in person maybe being more effective depending on who you are and what your personality is. But I think you have to play to your strengths and then stretch yourself a bit, is my sense, or enlist other people to help. So I know I've had great business partnerships with folks over time. I tend to be live an extrovert's life, but I'm more of an introvert at heart. And I've had great partnerships with people over time who are more extroverted, and they'd rather be out and having drinks with potential clients while I stay home and do the work. And I'm totally happy with that construct. So I think maybe enlisting some kind of partnerships with folks that might be able to go out and do the selling for you could be a good thing to do. And and I think it just depends on how deep you want to get into it. Are you getting into investing in SEO so you get discovered on the web, and then that whole world is changing constantly. What do you do about that? So I think you could go as deep, or as shallow as you want to in this field. But I think the main thing is to get all the support you need in order to be able to push outside your comfort zone some, to be able to sell yourself in the way that you need to. And if you can do that, I think that's my thing. If you can do it from a place of authenticity, so you're not kind of cringing each time somebody comes to your website where you're misrepresenting some or whatever it is, where there's a through line of your personality, that it will work out better for you. And I think the other thing is, and this is probably controversial, is that so many people want to make a killing, and not everyone can. And I think that that's why so many businesses fail as well, is that the expectations they have, or the obligations they have, maybe if it's a startup and they're getting funding to investors or PE funds or something like that, that we may be, because there's such a saturation everywhere you go, it may be that you need to limit your expectations about making a killing and be satisfied with something that really works for you, that supports your life and your lifestyle, but is not the next whatever liquid death. Maybe, I don't want to tamp anybody's ambition down, but what I've seen over time is those that don't shoot for the moon, but something more reasonable, have a more, balanced life. And it's more fulfilling in the end, because they don't have all the pressures constantly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because for me, I try to help people understand that the primary purpose of creating is to birth your brainchild and to give expression, to give life to that idea, to that unique solution, that creative solution that you bring to the marketplace in a way that can serve people. And then the next step after that is to turn that into a cash flow machine, right? But before you even, bother and ponder around the idea of, making a killing, you should have first found the initial gratification and fulfillment and satisfaction that comes from the fact that you birthed, your brainchild. It's just like the process of procreation or giving birth. When a mother gives birth, at least the average mother, when she gives birth, her desire is to see her child get born into the world. That fulfillment comes from hearing a baby cry having gone through the pain of gestation and whatnot, and the pain of delivery, she feels fulfilled that, oh, finally I've been able to birth this child. She doesn't care whether that child will turn out to be a Bill Gates or be the richest man in the world just yet, right? And then after the child is born, she then begins to figure out ways to nurture that child in a way that the child grows to be someone responsible, someone she can be proud of in society. So I see creativity in a similar way. If creatives have this understanding, a lot more people would be in the zone of creating, producing, manufacturing, making, building things they were born to build. And then when that happens, somehow it sets them on course to cashing out at the end of the day if they do the remaining steps right. But at least even if they don't end up cashing out, the one benefit they get is that they don't go to the grave with their ideas sitting in their head, which is a very great fulfillment, which is a very satisfying and gratifying feeling to have. So that's also, the way I see things, and it really, really aligns with what you said. Having said that, what do you have to say about the concept of branding in an individual as opposed to the concept of branding in an organization or in a corporate brand? Are there nuances and are there differences? Because I've seen many people, when they want to create, or brand their identity, brand their creative identity, they try to do it the way the big players and the corporate brands are doing it, and sometimes that doesn't go well for them. They hit the wall, right? Because the corporate brands have lots of money to spend, but the individual doesn't have that going for them, at least at the start. So, what are the nuances and what are the intricacies or the differences between, starting or building a brand for your creative identity as an individual as against doing it for a corporate brand?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to whether or not you're willing to be yourself. Again, it comes back to this concept of authenticity. What better way to sell yourself? I think that that's what I've experienced as well, is that I have done this whole evolution over time. What being in the volatile world of Silicon Valley marketing and advertising, in-house, I was laid off 6 times in the last 12 years. And one of the lessons that I learned from that is that in my voracious want for a steady paycheck, I said a lot of yeses to things that I wish I had the power to say no to, but felt the pressure of having to make money. So I sold myself as something that I wasn't, and was then, like not really satisfied or happy about it. My bills were paid. And so on that fundamental level, that was really important to me. But I worked with a lot of people that I would have rather said no to or ended my engagements with them sooner, but I felt like I didn't have the power to. So I think it's kind of the same. It always feels the same to me. Maybe it's just whatever my own experience, but as dating, like misrepresenting myself on a date in order to try to get into a relationship because that's what I want, is going to come back to haunt me at some point when we're just living life together and then you're not who you said you were going to be, right? So I think that it's about digging into having the courage to be yourself, and understanding that that might not appeal to everyone. I think a lot of us, from our conditioning on the playground as young kids, want to be accepted and part of the fold or part of the popular group or whatever it is, feeling like we're not on the outside, right? That we have a sense of community and support and connection. And that's a really human thing. And it's true. And in business, there's enough to go around. Why not be yourself in order as a sort of first filter? If you come out as yourself online through whatever your offerings are, it might be that you're not everybody's cup of tea. Like not everybody, you don't appeal to everyone, but those that do appeal to you, those who for whom you do appeal. fantastic. That would up the odds that you would have a better working relationship. And what is work but life, right? As part of the joy and many times also the necessary evil of what we need to do in this society to take care of ourselves, right? So the more that you can be yourself in doing that, the better. And I think that we're seeing that more and more. The brands that are bubbling to the top and really capturing attention are boldly themselves. And it could be at a whisper or it could be a scream. So it could be something like Dove that has decided that they're all in about body positivity and education and awareness, and it comes out bold everywhere with the strong voice and strong choices about that they make for their marketing and advertising. So I think again it comes back to being yourself and having the courage
Wow. And what?
to do that.
Wow, that is really, really transformational. And I think that this is a great place to bring our conversation to a close. Thank you so much for all those wonderful and powerful insights that you've shared. Do you have any final words before we bring it to a close?
Yeah, I think that to just I mean, my experience, I don't want to project my experience on everyone, but my experience as a creative myself and working with creatives over time is to make sure that, business is one thing, but have the support on the personal end of things too. It is effortful to grow your business. It is a vulnerable thing to do, to put your creativity out there and get it accepted or rejected and to have it tested in the marketplace, right? So build the structure around yourself of support and care in your day-to-day habits and those folks that surround you. And again, putting in a plug for mentorship as well, as you do all these things, so that it's sustainable over time. I think don't divorce the personal from the professional.
Wow, thank you so much. For you listening on the other side, I believe that this has been a profound moment that you have shared with us. And I want to believe that you found value in your time spent. You heard all the wonderful things that were said, and I believe you've picked a thing or two about how to brand your creative identity. And if that's the case, I encourage you to share this with someone, share this with a loved one, share this with a family friend, share this with a partner, and let them know that there's a way that they can project themselves in the marketplace that will help them stand out and avoid the curse of homogeneity. And they'll be glad you did. Thank you so much for joining us once again. And thank you, Stacy, for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being an amazing guest. And to everyone out there, I'll see you in my next episode. Until then, have a good one. Bye bye.